So you may have become a little concerned when you saw the title of today's message. But Miley Cyrus is not showing up anywhere, even though the title of the sermon looks fairly like one of the titles of our songs. But it's kind of, as the kids and I talked about a little bit, it's me. It's about me. It's about you. And a lot of times we are the ones that get in the way of God's work being done, right? Because, well, Lord, it's 98 today, and if it was 97, I think I could probably go do that thing you asked me to do. Or it's 30, but if it was 32. If the sun wasn't so bright, if I would have gotten more sleep last night, well, if I could get somebody to go with me and do those things. See, we have a list, right? And each one of us has our own list of the things that draw us away from the things that God calls us to, from feeding his people and making sure they aren't thirsty and making sure they are clothed and making sure they know that they are loved. And maybe that's the number one, because the rest of those things are kind of trickle down. If we have helped someone know that they are loved, that they are cared for, regardless of a past, regardless of their present, then the other things become known and can be cared for, right? So sometimes we are the tempter. We are the one that stands in the way of God's work being done. And so how do we step past that? How do we go to a place where we are not putting that persona forward? If we look at verse 9 in Romans 12, let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Now, it doesn't say to call folks out or anything. It's just don't like what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. The more we hold fast to the good, the less chance evil has of overtaking. The less chance those things that pull us away from God have for overtaking us. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit, serve the Lord. Do not lag in zeal. That's that whole, if it was 97, I sure could do that. But it's 98, so maybe tomorrow. Right? We have a thing. We all have those things. And God says, don't lack in zeal. Continue to have that zeal. And that comes from Romans. And this is, remember, this is somebody who heard Jesus speak, that is talking to us in Romans, who heard Christ sitting on the side of the hillside, sitting in the boat, walking down the street. He saw Jesus heal folks, saw him talk to people and give kindness and love, contribute to the needs of the saints, and extend hospitality to strangers. And remember, a few weeks ago, we talked about hospitality, and that when we go down into that word, it does mean caring for the stranger, right? Caring for the folks that we don't know, or the folks that maybe we know their face, but we really don't know them. We all have those people in our lives too, right? A lot of times we call them an acquaintance. But once you've seen an acquaintance 3 or 4 times, you kind of get used to their facial expressions, right? How they hold themselves, their body language, and not necessarily the words that are coming out of their mouth. Once you get to know somebody, even just a little bit, you can begin to read them, read what kind of day they're having. Several people today said, your eyes look kind of funny, Okay, 3 years, you know me enough, it's allergies, But it doesn't look normal, but you know what the normal is, right? So we have to be able to recognize folks for who they are, and then when they aren't being that person, how do we help them be themselves? Maybe, maybe they don't have rent for that month. Maybe they're wondering if they're going to get kicked out or if their landlord is going to let them make it up. Maybe the electricity, maybe they had something hanging on their door and the electricity gets turned off in 48 hours and they have no one to go to. Maybe it's as simple as some construction workers who obviously have not had a break for very long, and we're offering bottles of water, right? Or the folks that we see when we go into town that just look haggard and tired. And remember at Christmas time, for the winter, we made the blessing bags. What if we made summer blessing bags as well? No judgment, no criteria. Here, you look tired, you look hot. Here, bottle of water. Some mints, something to take the heat out. Maybe there's some handkerchiefs or something in there and some Kleenex for the allergy attacks and the sweat. See, we can be a blessing to folks in so many different ways when we don't stand in the way of what God is calling us to do. Number one, we have to have our ears open, right? Which for God's voice, there's a few times in your life you probably hear that audible voice. It's time, or it's not time, or do this or do that. But how many times do we feel that nudging, and we know God is asking us to do something besides what is going on right now, and we just aren't sure if we're going to be able to do that? If that's the thing that is going to keep us from following God. How? We ask God, how? How do I do this? How do I do that? You're calling me to do this? And we have to not only listen with our ears and our mind, but our hearts, because God would prefer that our ears were directly connected to our heart. Unfortunately, He created us for it to go to the brain first, right? And that was probably a creational flaw that He realized later. You know how when we invent something and then we go, oh, I probably would have done it this way, And He's like, man, why didn't I create the heart to be the thing that heard my voice first? Why didn't I create the heart directly connected to the eyes? So when my people see suffering, when they see grief, when they see great joy, when they see folks who just aren't themselves, that their heart kicks in long before their brain, which is saying, got to be to work in 10 minutes, that's saying, oh man, if I just had $10, I would hand it to him. Oh, if it was 98 degrees, I'd get out and talk to him about Jesus, but it's 99. What are the things, the temptations to stay in our air-conditioned spaces? There's a lot of them. There's a lot of those things that call us to stay where we are. Most of them are societal. Sometimes, though, a majority of the time, it's us absorbing those societal things and letting them rule our heart, because we're letting them take care of our brain first, right? And when we see three folks, well, I've only got enough stuff for one. Well, loaves and fishes, folks. If we can give a bag to one person, chances are they're going to share with the other two people sitting next to him. And what about the next guy that stops by? Then there becomes this network, right? It works the same way with us even here in this building. When we have needs, the other folks around us know us well enough that they can look us in the eye and say, something's not right today. What is it? How can I help? There's that. And for the life of me now, all of a sudden that word is gone, but the name of the show, but that show where he asks everybody, how can I help? What if that was the first words out of our mouths when we saw someone that didn't look like things were going right, or when we see them in distress on the side of the road, how can I help? And maybe it's not stopping, because we have to be safe, right? But maybe it's making a phone call, saying, hey, there's this guy stranded there. Or, hey, I see these people, we get quite a few folks, if you haven't noticed, walking between Avoca and us, with bikes, with backpacks, with obviously living with what is on their back. And to stop with a bottle of water and say, here. Several times I've seen, one time in particular, I saw a lady, she had a van load of kids, and she parked it quite a ways ahead of them and of him, and she ran back to him, and she was standing on the side of the road praying with him. You know what? My heart went, oh, Kim, when's the last time you stopped and just prayed with somebody, even if you didn't have cash, even if you didn't have a bottle of water? When's the last time you stopped with somebody and said, let me just pray for you, because it's all I got right now? But we know it's the best thing, right? Because hopefully, as we're praying for that person, they realize that their heart should be connected to their ears and eyes as well. That this design flaw, once we have stopped being immune to it, we can rechannel it. We can let the things of the world set aside so that we can see how God calls us. And we keep all the temptations, including our temptation for ourselves, to just, want that space without anything. What a temptation it is sometimes to just walk away and say, maybe next time. Let's work on not being the tempter, but being the solution. And in some ways, we have been called to be those who take temptation away, to be those who stand in the trenches with folks so that they can see the love of God, so that they can see how it is that they are called in this world, that they can see that they are not alone. And this gift was given to us to remind us that we are not alone. This cup and this loaf, ways to be together, not just in mind, but in heart. So, please join me this morning as we begin our service of the sacrament of Holy Communion.